Thank you for listening to The Lawyer's Daughter. This is Jen Carroll, and this podcast does not have any video. I know I'm on YouTube, but that doesn't matter. I really appreciate you listening to the podcast here. Let's go get started. Hello, my friends. It's September 8th, and it is day 59. They're going fast now. These days feel like they're going faster. And today's recording, today's blog, both of them, that what I've put together for today has bent my brain. Today we're going to talk about kids and women and LGBTQIA rights, but I don't think I knew how bad it was, like what the positions were so dramatically. So what I'm going to share with you today really has blown my mind, and it's a little longer than I planned because I just wanted to really slow down a tiny bit and take you through this. So if you're a man and you care about women or children or gay people or people that are not like you, please continue to listen. If you're a man that doesn't like women and doesn't care about kids and doesn't put them first and doesn't care about school shootings and thinks gay people need to be hidden somewhere because the drag queens are trying to give bad books to kids and turn them all into, I don't know, mini drag queens, which is what kids are. Let's face it. If you've ever been around children, I've got kids next door. Both boys, they wear princess dresses. It's amazing. It's awesome because they're in pretend. People, it's called pretend. It's what children use to have fun and what adults use to cope with life. Pretend. So here we are. Let's settle in because this is what you need to hear, and you need to decide what kind of a human you are. I'm sorry it's come down to this, but honestly, this really is what indicates the kind of human you are when you listen to these differences. Let's start with education. Okay, there is a fundamental difference in approach. This one's going to blow your mind because there's a name for something that I didn't even realize. And I'll share that with you. We're going to start with Harris, who advocates actively for an inclusive education system. Sorry, I need to slow down because now that I've read everything and I know what's going on, I might actually end up filling in blanks or leaving things blank that you didn't know about. So let me try to make sure I go really slowly because this is a big, big deal. So Harris wants an inclusive education system. And it's about public schools. That's her whole push, is public schools. That is what she believes in, and she really believes in the education system. So here's how this goes. She wants to support universal pre-K. If you don't have kids, pre-K is kind of where they learn how to hang out with each other and work collaboratively. Kids are not very good. I used to be a preschool teacher. Ha, ha, ha. Good times. It's super fun. I love kids. They're amazing. But there's a time when kids when they first go to preschool, they do parallel play, right? You probably heard of this. It's you do things where you just are playing in the same space. It's kind of like being married, from what I hear. You're both playing in the same space, but eventually you begin to do collaborative things where you learn, like, if you work with somebody, you can do something cooler, right? So that's a lot what pre-K does. Exposes them to letters, maybe numbers, but that's about it. Pre-K is really great. It's a good thing. So she believes in universal pre-K. That, by the way, just prepares kids for school in all the right ways. A lot of the socialization. Because, when those kids first get to school, they're feral. They've either been to preschool or they haven't. They come with all their stuff and they come in full bore energy and they're so happy to be there. So pre-K is a great idea. She proposes equity for marginalized communities, and that would be people who don't have the same access, right? Her support for universal pre-K is rooted in the belief that early childhood education lays in the foundation for lifelong success. If you think about the socialization that comes with school as well, it's just so true. This is particularly important for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. So if you're anti-crime, I need you to be paying attention right now, because study after study after study shows that kids who have access to school and who have access to more than what they don't have at home do better. So we want to stop this school to prison pipeline that goes on. We want to start with pre-K. She recognizes I'm very much an early childhood education advocate. Don't even come for me. I just believe in it so strongly. The kids are hungry for knowledge. They love it. Pause the TV, talk to them, explain what they're watching. They love this stuff. She recognizes that disparities in early education can have long-term impacts on achievement, and her focus on this area underscores her commitment to giving every child, regardless of background, a strong start. That's good for our country. She's also consistently pushed for higher pay raises for teachers, recognizing that teachers are the heart of student success. Oh, yeah, they are. And now they take a bullet and they have to think about that every day. And anecdote, did you hear one of the teachers down in Georgia had purposely brought in heavy furniture in case there was ever a school shooting? She brought in heavy furniture into her classroom so the kids would have something to hide behind. I guess she could have just brought in a Cybertruck, just park that sucker right there and let the shooter just shoot up the Cybertruck. It's insane. So the Kamala's extremely supportive of teachers, and she doesn't just talk the talk. Her goal is to walk the walk, and tied it to a broader education platform, which includes increasing investments in public schools, ensuring that schools serve marginalized communities, and get equitable funding. That's some of where all that STAR test nonsense started. For those of you without kids, the STAR tests were these George Bush-driven nonsense to try to get all our schools to perform at the same level. But all it did is reveal that some teachers are really good at teaching to the test and some teachers are not. And some schools have so many issues they can't even get to teaching to the test because they're trying to take care of hungry kids, abused kids, traumatized kids, etc. So you get it. Kids come to you hot with whatever their issues are, and you're supposed to teach. You need to have equitable funding for that to happen. And Harris really believes education is a fundamental right, and it should be. From a first world country, it should absolutely be a fundamental right. And a well-funded public education system is key to addressing a lot of these inequalities. In addition, she is opposed to undermining public education through the voucher systems or school choice programs that divert funding from public schools to private institutions. Please see Texas right now. That is happening in an unaudited, unsupervised way. And of course, the public schools who have minorities in them, those are people of color, they don't get the same funding because the kids that can afford to leave are using their vouchers and going to other private institutions, which, by the way, most of the kids who are going to the private schools are the kids that could have afforded to go to the private schools to begin with, which is a whole separate discussion. She's emphasized the importance of strengthening public education rather than privatizing it, pointing to the need for all students, including those from low-income and marginalized communities, access to quality education. And this stands in direct opposition to conservative efforts. So here we go. This is the one that's going to blow your mind because I had never heard this before. And now that I have, I can't unhear it. So let me start first and I'll tell you when it's coming. In contrast, Trump aims to dismantle the Department of Education. Did you hear me? He wants to just throw it away. Why would we need a Department of Education? Why would we want some sort of standards? Why would we want some sort of agreed upon curriculum? Why would we want that? Instead, he wants a school choice model where public funding follows students to private or charter schools. So essentially, he wants to privatize education. If you've looked at anything in social media and seen some of the things parents are putting up of what their kids are seeing in school, it's nonsense. It's crazy. So, all right, let's keep going. He wants to divert the funding to private institutions that often lack accountability or inclusivity requirements. You get that, right? So let's just give the money to those people over there. They have a church. They should be fine at teaching. Sure, they don't believe that dinosaurs were on this earth millions of years ago. It was only like a few years ago, when right before Jesus, I think the dinosaur. I don't even get me started on that creationism crap. But and I'm sorry, it's crap. You can believe in creation, but don't teach creationism at school. That's a story you save for at home. Thank you. We're going to use science and history and things out in the classroom, and you can supplement it with your understanding and your rationale. That's fine. That works out great. Please don't tell the kids the earth is flat, though, because that's going to make me crazy. So what he wants to do is essentially undermine what the white Christian nationalists want to do. So let's call it what it is they want to undermine public education. And this fits. Wait till you hear what they're going to do with women. So this is really key. This idea of undermining public education is key to what goes with their big master plan for the role of women and children in this new world that they think of, that they have, their white Christian nationalist world. Trump's position is further entrenched in Project 2025. Here we go. Here's the part that blew my mind, which lays out an even more aggressive plan to reshape the education system. Now, remember, he's already blown up the Department of Education. So now who's shaping it? Well, the president is. That's what he wants. He wants 100% control of things. So he'll have his lackeys who will reshape the education system by promoting parental control and conservative values in school curricula. I want you to hear conservative values and read that as Christian, white Christian nationalism as school curricula. This vision would prioritize teaching based on conservative principles, often at the expense of inclusive and factual representation of American history and diversity. And here it is, which they call patriot education. Patriot education, everyone. That's what it's called. And here's what a patriot education emphasizes. National pride. If you don't think I'm thinking Hitler Youth right now, you know I am. While downplaying or outright omitting critical perspectives on issues like slavery, racism, and how we treat indigenous people. Yeah, we can't talk about those things. They need to just disappear. Slavery, was job opportunity. That was job training. And racism is, I don't know, I guess appropriate because we can't build projects next to nice housing tracts because, that's bad. Okay. So the curriculum wants to present this sanitized version of American history. Patriot education is a sanitized version of American history, see Florida, where the nation's flaws are either minimized or ignored, depriving students of the opportunity to engage with the complexities of the past critically. And if you ignore history, you are doomed to what? Thank you. You just all said it wherever you're listening. You are doomed to repeat it. I love having call and response, and I can't hear your response, but I can. This approach not only glosses over the struggles of marginalized communities, but it also promotes a narrow, exclusionary view of American identity. And by pushing patriotic education, they aim to cultivate a national identity centered on liberty. I can do what I want. Democracy. I'm not sure about that. Democracy their way. And free enterprise. Oh yeah, the businesses. Remember, everything comes back to let the free markets run it. They just want free markets, free markets, free markets. Ask Elon. It's working great for him. Yet they exclude the narratives of those who these systems have historically oppressed. So they also gaslight, three-quarters of the nation? They're gaslighting those people's past and experiences and what their parents lived through and their grandparents and their grandparents' grandparents. It just didn't exist. Talk about I didn't grow up in apartheid South Africa. I had to be like that. You had to just be gaslit all the time. All right, it doesn't get any better, folks, because we're going to now get into, I haven't even gotten to women yet. Let's talk about the LGBTQIA rights, inclusivity, and restriction. And here's my caveat for this section. If you are not LGBTQIA and you don't have a relationship with somebody that is LGBTQIA, this might be hard for you. You may not understand the pain, and you may not understand the agony folks go through. And I'm going to just do a brief aside here for those of you that don't know. A very good friend of our family transitioned. I knew he's just a he. I knew when I first saw this child in second grade, this child was a boy. I don't care. Was wearing a dress, but I knew that was a boy. Like, the boy energy was so hard. It's not funny. And so I didn't know the parents. It was second grade, just learning people. And eventually I got to meet the mom, and she acknowledged, yeah. And we became such good friends through that because my daughter had no issues that this child was a boy. None at all. And in fact, this boy says if it weren't for my daughter, he wouldn't have had the courage to transition. He wanted to. He was desperate to. He was suicidal every day in that shower. He struggled so much. And this is a little kid, you guys. This is 7 and 8 years old. And this kid was struggling. And the parents, who were very, very Christian, I mean, probably might even have been, well, I don't know if they would have gone as hard as some people do as an evangelical, but they were part of our most evangelical church in town. And that church just sent them away. Once the child transitioned, the church would have none of it. They lost their whole community. They lost all their support. The fact that so many people didn't even stay their friends, it made me sick. It's the thing I hate most about religion, and it actually just manifested right in front of my eyes. And luckily, this insane liberal, me and my daughter, were there for them, and I love that kid like my own. I mean, to me, he's my son, another one of my kids. And so I know the pain of this. I've also grown up with, I mean, my whole life I've been supported by gay people tremendously. And Katie's first caregiver was this not anything like I would have expected lesbian. I mean, she has a lot of testosterone. She even has facial hair. And at first I was kind of like, you take your breath in a little bit because somebody looks so different from you. And she's absolutely the best human being I've ever met. She taught me so much about early childhood education. So I just need to say this. If this triggers you, I want you to look at yourself and look at your own issues, because everything LGBTQIA people want to do has nothing to do with your life. It just doesn't. It just doesn't affect you unless you're there to provide support, love, and acceptance. So I don't think anybody listening to me is this kind of person, because you couldn't put up with me if you were different. I know I have a point of view. So, I just needed to say that, though, because I know some people just get it scares them. I think it's fear, honest to God. And I'm done with fear. We need to stop being afraid. I had a whole murderer in my life. I'm done with fear. And I lived in fear for decades. Man, locks on my doors, the whole thing. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. You're going to find out how ugly this is. Kamala has been a staunch advocate of LGBTQIA rights, consistently supporting measures that aim to achieve equality for all individuals, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. 2 things you would never walk up to someone and ask them. You just don't need to know. I promise you don't. One of her central commitments has been to the passage of the Equality Act. I didn't even know about this act. The Equality Act has been just languishing in Congress for the longest time. It's intended to extend comprehensive protections against discriminations in such areas as employment, housing, and public accommodations. That seems incredibly reasonable to me. Harris views this legislation as a crucial step towards eradicating discrimination against LGBTQIA people and has championed its passage throughout her career. Her support for the Equality Act reflects her broader commitment to creating an inclusive society that protects the rights of marginalized communities. By the way, I did ask the kids what people say for LGBTQIA, because I'm like, is there a word? And they said, yeah, it's queer. But I'm not queer, and I don't feel comfortable using it, so I'm not using queer, but I think it's okay. But I'm not going to tell you to use it. Just saying. That's what the kids said. So if anybody knows better, tweet at me and let me know, because I'd like to just get clear on that. In addition to Kamala's support of anti-discrimination laws, she's been a vocal opponent against conversion therapy, a practice aimed at changing an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity through psychological torment. She has consistently advocated, and for those it works for, I don't believe you, but okay. You have to deal with your community and your peers and everything else. So I know people have to make choices that I don't think are good for them, but you got to do what you got to do to survive your environment. So I get it. But generally speaking, conversion therapy is some kind of batshit crazy stuff. It's a great way to gaslight and make a person insane, because you're telling them what they believe is true is not true. That's like the definition of gaslighting. And she's trying to stop this harmful and discredited practice, and it's been completely discredited. Furthermore, Harris has actively supported transgender rights, particularly in the military, where she opposed Trump administration's ban on transgender service members, Again, you shouldn't know. It's not your business and it doesn't affect you. Transgender people are just people. You don't need to know they're transgender. Harris believes formally including transgender individuals because in the armed forces strengthens military diversity and promotes equality, arguing that all qualified individuals, regardless of gender identity, should have the right to serve. So essentially, we're talking about something that already happens. These folks are already in the military, but now we can stop with the labeling and the nonsense and all of these, you're different than me, which eventually probably even impacts how women are treated. All of this in this military that, it's only a place for straight men. Oh, okay. So her advocacy extends to access to gender-affirming healthcare, expanding that access, actually, and that's a crucial issue for transgender kids and individuals. She has pushed for policies that ensure transgender people, particularly those relying on government healthcare programs, can get the access to the care that they need. In the realm of education, Harris has also pledged to uphold the Title IX protections for transgender students, ensuring that they can access school facilities and participate in activities that correspond with their gender identity. This stance underscores her broader commitment to protecting the rights of transgender individuals in all facets of life, from healthcare to education and beyond. And she's always advocated for these comprehensive protections. She wants to make sure we live in a world that's inclusive and as much equality as possible. It doesn't matter what your individual needs are. You should be able to be included in America. That's how it's supposed to work. So Trump, on the other hand, has sought to roll back LGBTQIA protections. His administration rescinded the guidelines established under the Obama administration that allowed transgender kids to use the bathrooms that corresponded with their gender identity in public schools. So, I guess I'm not a stand-up urinal kind of gal. But most of the time when you're in a public school and you go to the bathroom, unless you're one of the boys that uses the stand-up urinal, and if you are, you're probably missing because that's what schoolboys do. Everybody else goes in a stall. And so do transgender kids. They just go in a stall. It doesn't matter what they're doing in there. They could be texting. It doesn't matter. They're in a stall. So it doesn't matter if they're in the bathroom or not. So what I'm saying is he already took that away, that they have to go. So my kid would have to go in a girl's bathroom, even though he presents completely male. Okay, so this significantly impacted the rights of transgender youth and stripped away protections they had previously had for equal access. The stripping of rights kills me. Furthermore, Trump's Department of Health and Human Services rolled back protections for LGBTQIA individuals in healthcare, and it eliminated non-discrimination protections under the Affordable Care Act, which allowed health care providers to refuse treatment based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Excuse me for 1 minute, but the people that he has allowed healthcare providers to refuse treatment based on sexual orientation or gender identity. What he's saying is he wants to privatize everything. Remember we've talked about the other policies. His whole thing is let business take the reins. Let business take the reins. Let business do this. Business can do it. It'll be driven by the market. Except built into this market-driven economy that Trump wants so badly is discrimination and hostility towards people who are different than white Christian nationalists. That's the plan. So Trump vehemently opposed the Equality Act, the one Kamala is for, which seeks to expand civil rights protections to include sexual orientation and gender identity in areas such as employment, housing, and public accommodations. So the Equality Act says you can't discriminate against people in the job, in their housing, or with public accommodations like libraries. I don't know, public accommodations. He argued that the act infringed upon religious freedoms, don't you know? And he sided with those who believed businesses should have the right to refuse service to LGBTQIA individuals based on their religious beliefs. This stance emboldened conservative groups that advocated for the legal right to discriminate against LGBTQIA people under the guise of religious liberty. They want freedom of their religion, so much so that they can discriminate against other Americans. They can actually tell an American, you can't shop here. You can't have my service. I'm not going to serve you because I think that what you do privately, that's none of my business, is offensive. Well, I think what you do privately, it's none of my business, is offensive, but here we are. Okay, so under Project 2025, the Republican platform aims to take these regressive policies even further because, don't you know, of course they do. They outline a vision for America that emphasizes traditional family values and traditional family structures and opposes expanding any LGBTQIA rights. They want to reverse the gains made by LGBTQIA advocates, including efforts to prevent discrimination in education and healthcare, and they want to endorse policies that reinforce traditional gender roles and marriage. Oh, and do I have something coming up for you in just a second about your traditional gender role and the definition of marriage, pushing for legal and social frameworks that undermine LGBTQIA inclusion. Because where the hell do you put people that don't want to fit your model? If they don't fit, you must, I don't even know, it's not even a quit. If you don't fit, you don't, I think of a rhyming word. Everybody think of it right now. Okay, so there you go. They want to just, in the project, in the minds of the white Christian nationalists, which Marge Green today proudly admitted being one of, their whole goal is if you can't be like us, you can't anything. If you can't get with our program, you can't have anything. And let me tell you what that means. Let me tell you what the program means for all you women out there. And if you're a man, I hope you're listening because we need your support. If you're the kind of guy that thinks this stuff is bonkers, let's go out. I got a margarita and some salsa and chips. Anyway, here we go. Harris has consistently fought to protect and expand women's access to reproductive health care, advocating for the codification of Roe v. Wade into federal law. Her stance on abortion is rooted in the belief that every woman should have the right to make decisions about her own body free from government interference. Reproductive health is framed as a crucial component of gender equality, linking it to broader issues of healthcare access and economic security for women. I need you to think about that, economic security for women. She has also supported initiatives to address maternal health disparities, particularly among women of color who face higher mortality issue rates due to systemic inequities in healthcare. And if you haven't seen some of the studies, they've been shared on Twitter. Well, that's where I hang out. So there are some amazing studies about how women of color are not even given pain medications like white women. The doctors just discriminate right out of the chute. It's horrible. It's horrifying. So Harris's broader platform includes expanding healthcare access, supporting paid family leave, and fighting for equal pay for women, emphasizing that the future of women's rights hinges on dismantling systemic barriers that continue to oppress women in all aspects of life. She's also pushed for policies that promote gender equality in the workplace, recognizing that there are systemic barriers that prevent women from achieving full economic participation. There just are, and I can tell you this, and you know she knows. A cornerstone of her platform is the fight for equal pay, where she supported legislation in the Paycheck Fairness Act aimed at closing the gender pay gap and holding employers accountable for discriminatory pay practices. This, by the way, didn't pass. It's sitting there. So these are things that I guess we'll come back and fight for. Harris has framed this issue as essential to women's financial security and independence, highlighting that women, particularly women of color, are often paid significantly less than their male counterparts for the same work. Yes, that's true. Harris has championed policies that support paid family leave, which she sees as critical to ensuring that women can balance work and family responsibilities without jeopardizing their careers. By the way, paid family leave works for guys too. It doesn't have to be the woman that drops out of her job and takes care of mom. It could be the guy, and it also could be the guy that drops out of work and takes care of his woman. I mean, just paid family leave is for all of us. She supports the federal paid family medical leave programs that allow women to take off time for childbirth and to care for a sick family member while maintaining job security. There you go. Her approach to workplace equality extends beyond wages, not just pay, people. She wants to create environments where women are supported in all aspects of their professional lives, whether through better work-life balance policies or stronger protections against workplace harassment and discrimination. That's so funny because that's, one of my sweet spots is this workplace harassment and discrimination. And I had one constructive termination, which means they basically take all your responsibilities away, but they don't fire you. It's horrible. It's horrible. And then I had, of course, my termination, which was felt uh, slightly discriminatory. I would say the termination felt less discriminatory and more half-baked insanity. But I've also been in the situation, like I had one coworker hit me in the face. I should have sued their asses, what I should have done. But you can't even afford to sue. I'm doing one lawsuit right now, and it's horrifying for me because it's so expensive. And I don't know if I'm going to win or not. I just decided I was old enough to finally fight one of these things because I've put up with so much. It was kind of just repressed. Ugh, I'm tired of being treated crappy. So guess what? So then Harris has something that I've never, ever, ever, ever heard a politician speak about. Harris has emphasized the importance of women's leadership in business. It's also in government, but this blows my mind. She's been a vocal advocate for increasing the representation of women in leadership roles across all sectors, recognizing that women's voices are crucial in shaping policies and corporate decisions that impact their lives. Harris's platform includes policies designed to break down the structural barriers that keep women, especially women of color, from ascending to leadership positions. Her focus on empowering women economically is rooted in the belief that true equality cannot be achieved until women are fully represented in all areas of society. I love this so hard. But now I'm going to take you, here's my sound effect for going to a dark place. Whoosh. Could have made that sound more like a flush, maybe, but here we go. In stark contrast, Trump's stance on women's rights, I don't even think he's even said that sentence. I can't even imagine he's even said that sentence. Particularly regarding abortion, we'll start there, but it's going to get better, has been shaped by the pressure of anti-abortion groups and conservatives within the Republican Party. During his presidency, Trump appointed 3 conservative justices, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Comey to the Supreme Court, resulting in the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which had protected the constitutional right to abortion for nearly 50 years. His administration also supported policies that allow states to restrict access to abortion, even in cases of rape or incest. While Trump has expressed inconsistent views on whether the issue of abortion should be left to the states, his administration played a crucial role in dismantling federal protections for women's reproductive rights. And now millions of women across the country do not have access to safe, legal medical services. You can say abortion if you're anti-abortion, don't have one, but it's also miscarriage. It's also anything where it's a reproductive issue is a hot effing mess. And this is disproportionately impacting low-income women and women of color who have to have fewer resources to seek care in states with fewer restrictions. Also, just across the board, guys, women are not great at fighting City Hall because we don't have a lot of practice, but we're getting better. And people with less education and no income are in the worst position to fight. They're fighting for their survival. They don't have to fight. They don't have the energy to fight tyranny and oppression. They got to find food and water and safety and housing. So this is where this becomes so cruel, because it's really lambasting those people that have no way to fight this in any powerful way. They have no power whatsoever. So here you go. Project 2025 takes all of this even further by laying out a roadmap for the future of women's rights that is both, this will shock you, regressive and harmful. The project promotes the expansion of state-level abortion restrictions, including policies that would criminalize abortion providers and severely limit the conditions under which women can access abortion services. In many states, these restrictions would go as far as banning abortion outright, with no exceptions for rape or incest, forcing women to carry pregnancies to term against their will. But now I want you to listen to how they're going to solve the problem, all of these pregnancies. And it scares me. And I'm going to tell you my dystopian view of what's going to happen here, but it's based on what has already been said and is out in the ether. Additionally, Project 2025 advocates for promoting adoption as an alternative to abortion, framing it as a morally superior choice while ignoring the physical, emotional, and economic toll forced pregnancies take on women. Okay, so they're mandating that they're suggesting the alternative is adoption. But I want you to tell me right now, how many Christian white nationalists are going to adopt a child of color for the purposes of raising them up to be one of their family? Let me tell you what I do think they would adopt a child of color for. We've already removed the Department of Education. Remember, that doesn't exist anymore. So you can homeschool, you can private school, whatever. So there's no accounting for a child's going to school anymore because we know all these private systems don't have any accountability. So I don't have to prove that the kid goes to school. We know healthcare is all whacked out. So there's not like necessarily going to be, and doctors don't do this anyway. There's no medical person following the health and care of this adopted child of color. What might a child of color do in a Christian evangelist household, especially if that child is a girl? Oh, yeah, become a slave. How could this adoption of kids of color not become trafficking? You're going to need to help me understand how this isn't going to end up in trafficking. We've already seen enough of these white Christian evangelicals who have trafficked kids and have used them as slaves in their homes. In fact, two of our House members, both Matt Gaetz and Mike Johnson, and I'm using air quotes right now, air quote, adopted young men, 14-year-olds, I think, to come live with them for we don't know what purpose. But it looks shady because both those men, Mike Johnson and Matt Gaetz, were fully formed adults. And they brought in a 14-year-old young man into their lives with no formal paperwork, which is, of course, the point, right? So Project 2025, I wanted to share this dystopian view because it all lines up too easily, people. If you look at how this lines up, if you take away all the regulations, you take away all the protections, and you say the president's in charge of education and the churches are the ones who are going to do all this mental health care, because, that's where I go. It's going to allow for very, very, very bad Stephen Miller kind of things to happen. This is the people who thought nothing of separating children from their families at the border. Okay, there's no ethos there that says that they care about kids of color. None. They have proven never, 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 never is this at the top of their mind. In fact, I believe we have Border Patrol agents down there committing rape on young girls at the border. Not all of them. There's a lot of really good Border Patrol agents. I don't mean to impugn all of them. I mean to impugn the ones who are effing racist trash who are down there right now sexually assaulting young girls trying to come across the border. And if you're going to tell me they shouldn't be coming across the border, they're kids. So they're doing what their parents say. So shut up. We know we have a problem. Trump told the Congress not to vote on it. He told his House members not to pass the border bill, and here we are. So from the people who brought you child separations is now adoption of children of color. It's going to go great. Okay. They want to that Project 2025 effectively seeks to strip women of their autonomy. Let me be me? No, you won't be able to be you. Reinforcing patriarchal control over women's bodies, and the vision would leave women in a position where their rights are determined by state governments and their husbands. Got it? Project 2025 seeks to reinforce traditional gender roles, advocating for policies that undermine gender equality and in the workforce and within families. The project promotes a vision where a woman's role is centered around motherhood and family. You've seen that drawing of the umbrellas and the woman's under the man's umbrella and the man's under I don't know whose umbrella. Anyway, it's to make a woman absolutely subservient to her husband. Sorry, what was I thinking? It downplays all efforts to close the gender pay gap and provide paid family leave. By emphasizing traditional family values, Project 2025 not only seeks to erode reproductive rights, but also places a woman in a socially regressive framework that limits their economic and personal freedoms. And this contrasts sharply with Harris's focus on expanding opportunities for women and ensuring access to healthcare and fighting for gender equality for all. Yeah, there you go. There it is. That is The Handmaid's Tale, right? Everybody says it's like going to be The Handmaid's Tale, but that's essentially it. And I don't know if you noticed in The Handmaid's Tale, nobody was ever happy. Nobody was happy unless they finally saw each other after some separation. But it was not a happy place. So there's a clear choice for our future if you're not a Christian nationalist. There's one that says we are Americans and everybody here has value and everybody should be included and everybody should have equity and everybody should have rights. And then there's the one that says, no. There's a hierarchy and some of you don't have agency and some of you don't get to count. Some of you need to belong to a traditional value with reduced federal oversight and absolutely no support for marginalized groups. The table is in the blog of these things, RNC position, the Project 2025 position, and the DNC position. So you can take a quick look and come in and read if you need to know more. I've got links everywhere in here. And I'm sorry, this is just so dark. I didn't realize how dark it was. I kind of realized, but this is awful. So anyway, I'll be back tomorrow with more. Hang in there, guys, because when we fight, we win. See you tomorrow. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate, and I'll be back with another episode really soon.